If you're just getting into classical guitar, you're going to start seeing these names all the time. Sor, Carcassi, Giuliani, Carulli, among others. These are the granddaddies of classical guitar, and we're still playing their studies today because they give us such great technique exercise, and they're nice little pieces that we can play for other people, not just exercises. In this lesson, I want to show you a simple study by Fernando Carulli called Waltz in E minor. What's interesting about this piece, and kind of great, is that we're not going to use our ring finger at all. Now, our ring finger is the weakest of all of our fingers in the right hand, except for the pinky, and the pinky's so weak we don't even use it. Here we're going to be just using the thumb, the index, and the middle, and that means your thumb might be traveling to strings that it maybe isn't used to going to. We very typically play our thumb on the bass strings, but the thumb can be played on any and all the strings, so this actually gets us a little bit closer to the floor. Because we're not using our ring finger, we're forced to use these three, and that's going to make you do something that I think is important that people don't do enough of, is have your hand a little bit lower, a little closer to the floor, because everybody wants to be like this, and that causes you to make either free strokes that are bad because you hit other strings, or it makes you move from the weak knuckle right here in order to not bang into the next string. But if we're over the strings like this, more as a habit, and we're generally there, we can get a better follow-through motion and move from the big knuckle, which is what we want. The main pattern for this, we're going to do it just on open strings, is this. We're going thumb and middle finger at the same time. Then we have the index here on the second string, and now your thumb moves to the G string, and then we go index, middle, index. So this is in 3/8 time, it's notated. These are all 16th notes, but you can think of it as 3/4 time, it's just a waltz. So we can count it this way: 1 and 2 and 3, and 1 and 2 and 3, and in the left hand, we're playing essentially an E minor chord, but instead of fingering the whole thing, we're not playing those strings. We're going to start here, and then we're going to go to a couple of notes from a B7 chord, D sharp, the first fret of the fourth string, and then F sharp here with your ring finger. So if we plug these in here, we have this. Then these two notes, the pattern though here is different. Look, my pinky comes down here. So we're doing this on the second measure, like that. And then we go to this, which is E minor again, but with G on top. So we have kind of a 4-measure pattern here. We're going like this: 1, 2, 3, and repeat it. But this pattern is different. Without the left hand, it looks like this: 1 and 2 and 3, and if you can break things up into right and left and just work on the right or just work on the left, it can really demystify things sometimes. So this pattern is pretty simple when we take the left hand out. 1 and 2 and 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then it just happens all again. And then for the end of this first section, we play all 4 of these fingers. Now here comes the ring finger. Just for this block chord. The rest of the time, not using the ring finger at all. So this study has 4 different sections. Each section is supposed to repeat once, and then we go back to the beginning and play the A section again. At the beginning of this video, I only did it once just for brevity's sake, but let's go back and play this one more time because the music is asking us to do that. Let's go to the next part now. Now we have something new. We're going to play thumb, index, thumb, index. Now this is pretty common in Spanish guitar stuff, doing the thumb and index, malagueña. So we can do a rest stroke with our thumb or a free stroke, that's up to you. If you're just starting out more on the beginner side, this is more of a beginner study. You might want to play free strokes, or you might be not as comfortable with the rest strokes, so don't worry about that. These would be rest strokes. See, I'm resting on the next string below with my thumb, or do free strokes. So this is the little snippet of a B7 chord Normally we can play it this way or even with the pinky, but here, since we're not even playing those strings, our fingers are just like this. 1 and 2 and 3. And now we go to E minor, or rather this note, which is a part of E minor, and we play the opening pattern again. And then we have the pattern that we saw the second half of the first 4 lines. And it goes back to this again. So this is just a variation on the beginning. We do this again. And block chord on that E minor fragment. It's telling us to repeat, so we'll go back. Okay, that part, that's the end of the B section, or the second section. That's where the song is finally going to end, at the very end of the song. We're going to go into 2 more sections, and then we come back again and play the first 2. But now we are right in the middle, on the 3rd section, right in the middle of the study, and now it's going to go to the relative major, but we are in E minor here, certainly. The B7 really tells us that. But the relative major is G major, and that's where we're going now. So it's going to go to the happy kind of flip side of E minor here. So we're going to start out with a G note. And this time we're going to be playing little abbreviated block chords. When we play block chords, we very often use the ring, middle, and index. We even did that on this song. But here we're just going to play these 2 with the thumb. So I'm going to suggest that you do a free stroke with the thumb, because people have trouble doing a thumb rest stroke with simultaneous blocks. But that is something to work towards if you're not comfortable with that yet. Okay? And we're going to go like this. 1, 2, 3. Try to leave that G note down, because it's supposed to last the whole measure. 1, 2, 3. Now this little shape we have, this finger comes off, just slide it up, and we go into this arpeggio. Kind of a backwards thing, going middle, index, thumb, and then go to the floor again. So scoot it down 2 frets and do the exact same thing. Do the same thing again with nothing in the left hand, except your thumb is going to travel down here to this string. So this measure can be tricky. Let's repeat it a few times. Okay, we'll do that 4 measures of this section. Scoot it up. Scoot it down. Take it off. And again, the next thing is the same. 1, 2, 3. So that ends a little bit differently than the other one. Just staying here on G, but we got to repeat it. Okay, next section, this is interesting. Instead of going like this, like the second part of the first half went like this, right, the thumb, index, this is gonna go in reverse. It's gonna go index, thumb. So he's going backwards now just to mess with us. That's what these studies kind of are for. So kind of trip you up on purpose in a musically pleasing way, hopefully. Okay, so we got 2 things going on here. We have this exchange of index and thumb. 1 and 2, and I'm on a D note here, the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. 1 and 2, and now go to C sharp, that note's not in the key, and play both of these strings together. When you do these little blocks, we want to have our fingers touching each other, even when you're done, like even through the follow-through motion, that keeps you honest so that you're really playing them simultaneously. If you don't have them lightly touching each other at least, they're going to be staggered and likely to not happen at the same time, but we want them absolutely simultaneous. So this first measure here is, and then C sharp, that's not in the key, but it's just kind of a lower neighbor to this D note, or it's a chromatic thing, you could say, because we're going to go down to C in a second. Now we have C and F sharp. This is giving us the sound of D7, that tritone there that wants to resolve to G. That is the history of Western harmony right there. Sure enough, that's where we're going. So we have, these are all little block chords with the middle and index, and then we have pinky on the 3rd fret of this high G note here on the 1st string. So we're going with the thumb in between. Okay, with that with the measure before. And then we're back to this, which we've already done a few measures before. And then we end with the thumb on the low G and an index or middle playing G on the open G string. Look at the whole section again. Now we go back to the beginning and play the first 2 sections again. Repeat. Notice how I get softer and louder. Repeating it. And that's the end of the piece. This is one of those great little classical guitar studies, not too challenging, but a lot of good stuff in there. There's so many of these, you should really start collecting these classical guitar studies from Fernando Sor, Matteo Carcassi, Giuliani. Names like Dionisio Aguado is another one. There's Villa-Lobos, a Brazilian composer, has some really great ones. Those are pretty challenging. But these guys have thought through just about every aspect of classical guitar playing, from music theory standpoint to technique and strategy. So they've really done a lot of work for us, and we just play these studies so that we can really maintain our technique. And they're also some beautiful pieces in themselves. If you want to play more easy classical guitar studies like this, check out this one from Carcassi, one of those names I mentioned earlier. This one really helps us work on what we call the pinch motion in the right hand. You've heard that in Blackbird, and all kinds of classical guitar stuff. Check it out right there.